heard this same music coming from the open desert in the opposite direction.
Right.
And it was just unbelievably unique and surprising at the same time. I stood there and I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I said out loud, "I hope you enjoyed the music that I wrote for you." And it continued. And it wasn't shortly after that, I literally ran across back to the circle, another 100 yards on the opposite side where you were, and I brought you all back, and I think there was a few other people that we brought with us at the time.
Right. No, it was amazing. And this is exactly the kind of contact that happens that's very exciting and very interactive, and in the midst of this, of course, there are other types of phenomena going on, whether there's an orb or a craft that flies over, all kinds of other things. One thing I want to mention, and going back to the beginning, as it were, I wanted you to be able to share that story, and it's very important because the CSETI logo, which is 3 circles connected by lines, of course, you saw them three-dimensional as spheres, which is how they'd be in 3D.
Right.
That originated, if you go, a lot of these stories are in the new book that's come out called Contact Countdown to Transformation that has a DVD with it. And on that DVD is an aerial shot. We rented an airplane and went above this crop circle and actually filmed it. And it's a crop circle in England that appeared after Colin Andrews and I and a group of people went up on Woodborough Hill, and we all were given this vision of this form. And it was like it was given to us because we all agreed upon that form. And so we actually went into meditation, contacted the extraterrestrial civilizations, and asked them to make a crop circle. Mentally, we were doing this, visualizing it. In that form, and the next morning, that crop circle form, which looks like this, which has become the CSETI logo, was found in a field very close to where we were by a farmer in the wee hours of the morning, at dawn, at like 5 in the morning or something, because you're so far north, the sun comes up very early in July, late July. And what was interesting about that is that it was, in a sense, a CE5 crop circle. And it was after this happened that Colin Andrews came forward and said, yes, in fact, even from the early days, from 1989, 1991, when we were getting involved with all this, he and Busty Taylor were flying over and looking at that time, they were these just simple circles that were appearing very near to where Colin Andrews lived. And at one point he turned to Busty Taylor, and they were flying over this field. And they said to each other, wouldn't it be amazing if a circle appeared that combined all the different forms of circles that we've seen, a circle with a ring and with a Celtic cross and this and that, and the very next morning in exactly the spot when they said that to each other over that field, when they were flying over that point of that field, exactly that crop circle that combined all the elements appeared. So there is a interactivity of this that is transdimensional, that is mediated in consciousness and thought, which is really mind-blowing and has been dispositively proven to be possible. And this is where you then have to say, well, how is that happening? And one of the things I point out to people is that when you start dealing with these transdimensional technologies that permit travel faster than the speed of light and communication faster than the speed of light, you're dealing with technologies that cross into what I call over the crossing point of light and the speed of light. And when you get into that dimension, you're dealing with the realm of thought visualization, the astral realm, the realm of consciousness, and all of that. And this is why the science of consciousness, and certainly everyone at the World Puja Network understand this, the science of consciousness is the central science of the next 1,000 years. Of course, we need to get out the new energy technologies and all the things that have been suppressed for 100 years, but really that will be the big breakthroughs that happen in understanding how this is. And it's not just it is a science, and there is a methodology to it, not only for meditation, but also for contact and for manifestation. And that's what we're finding with these CSETI expeditions, and it just keeps accelerating. And one thing that Colin had happen, I mentioned this a moment ago, is one of the original tones that we used in our contact protocols were these tones that were recorded in a crop circle field where there was levitation and anti-gravity and all kinds of weird stuff happening. And it's an amazing story that Colin Andrews shares. And they did get a recording of this tone, and then we have it, and Charlie's been able to, really clean it up and what have you. So I don't know, Charlie, if you could play that so people can hear.
Sure.
This, by the way, when you get this DVD that comes with the book, Contact, Countdown to Transformation, and you can get that at disclosureproject.org, is on there so that you can play this. And there's also a CD version of it, so if you want to go out into the wilderness somewhere and play these tones while you're doing the visualization and meditation, it's a very, very powerful one because this is from them. People say, why do we, radio transmit these out there? I said, well, this wasn't created by man. This was technological, and it's a tone, but it came from the ETs, so very important. So if you play that one now, Charlie.
Sure.
Maybe a bit louder.
One thing we should note about that is that the sounds that you're hearing are actually synthesized sounds. The original recording was done through a video recorder, a high-end video camera, and while Colin and his associates were walking through the crop circle, the energy of the crop circle literally fried all the gear, the video equipment, any audio equipment they had, and this sound was the only thing that survived the experience. Not only was it unique, it was also had a directionality to it because it came. It sounded like it came through one end of the circle and went out through the other, and that's why you hear the sounds fading in and out. The original recording had a lot of noise and static and everything on it. When I listened to it originally, I thought there was something very recognizable about it because the sound is actually the purest waveform there is, which is called a sine wave, and I was able to recreate it almost exactly as it was in the original recording, and I thought that was the salient part of the recording and not necessarily the context in which it took place.
Well, and of course, this is very significant that this has come from elsewhere, and that there was a recording, but and that whatever energy was in that field was so powerful that it did. I mean, there were these $75,000 BBC Betacams and equipment that completely had all kinds of circuits that got kind of fried from all this. And what I find interesting about these tones is that when we've had a lot of anomalous things happen with these tones. For example, when I first had the idea to take them and not just play them with an audio boombox or something, but also to take a radio and transmit them. The first time we did that, we were, believe it or not, on Marconi's Hill in England, where the first telegraph was sent in the 1800s. And we were up on this hill, and I had a transceiver, a radio transmitter and receiver, and I was transmitting these tones. And suddenly, after we finished, all around us in an omnidirectional way, a very similar sine wave tone came into space around us, and it had begun to rain and was windy, and all of us could hear this doo 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 doo, and it went around and around and around, and it was them answering us. And at other times we've done this where we've had the button pressed to send out the tone, and the ETs have overridden the circuit so that while we're transmitting, the tones or some variant of the tone comes back through the radio. Now, technically, anyone who knows anything about these radio receivers and transceivers know that when you're transmitting, you can't receive. You can either receive or transmit. In this case, we'll be transmitting. They'll override the transmission and come through. We've also had it happen where we've had the radios off, and they will start sending these tones through them even when they're turned off. Very, very strange electromagnetic, transdimensional electronics. And this is the sort of things, and this has happened dozens and dozens of times, and we've had people on our contact groups that are around the world who are using these tones in the meditation who have had all kinds of variants of the same kinds of strange experiences with these tones. So, by the way, there is a training kit at disclosureproject.org that you can get that has the CDs with all these different tones on them and the meditation instruction and all of that that's on that site. And I think that what people are finding is that the tonality can come, and it is often directional, but often omnidirectional. In other words, it'll seem to appear in just space around you with nothing that you can see that's originating it, and then it spreads out in sort of an omnidirectional way. And this is exactly what happened at Mount Shasta a few years ago. We were up in the National Forest on the slopes. I guess we were up at about 5,000 feet at Mount Shasta in what we call our secluded site. And we were there, and I was doing the guided meditation where we go into deep meditation, and then we go in expansion of awareness and go into space and make contact, and then we do this sort of prayer and meditation for the healing of the earth and for universal peace. And during that process, just at a moment when I paused, because I felt something coming, everyone in the circle heard this tone that then they could see in their mind. Now, Linda Willits had a tape recorder on that was just an old-fashioned, wasn't digital, one of those tape recorders, with a tape. And she got just a little bit of it, and it's really a faint hint of what we actually experienced, because what we actually experienced was something coming from within space-time that emerged, and the tonality of it was so pure and so amazing that everyone saw in their mental imaging, it overrode anything that you were thinking about, where you saw these spheres, very similar to the spheres that Charlie just explained with his experience some years ago. But in this case, they became like a string of spheres as the tone moved, almost like a string of pearls that were these perfect spheres, sort of a pearly, grayish-white color that was formed by the tone. And this is very Vedic. Again, people with the World Puja Network understand the concept in the Vedas of name and form, where the sound tonality within thought can manifest and materialize an object. In this case, it was an extraterrestrial vehicle that was there represented in its tonality, but then visually in people's minds we could see the form of it. as it floated through the circle.